It feels weird not facing the webcam, but there's a good reason for that. Alright. Let's not waste any time, let's get right into this. So, the category for this is any percent, 1 player, 2 controllers, mirror. And as you can see, I am using this mirror to aim at the television behind me. Which means that this is actually going to be the hardest part of the run, which is trying to calibrate the super scope aiming with a mirror. Okay, that's actually pretty good. The 2 controllers part of this is I have the super scope in this hand, and I have an upside down SNES controller in the other hand. Upside down because I'm facing away and all of my directional inputs are going to be mirrored. So, time for this will start when I select the controller option and the next screen fades in. And we are good to go. Now this is another challenging part, which is selecting the correct stage. Okay, good. So, Yoshi Safari is a rail shooter that you need the super scope to play. And it's a pretty straightforward game. You just go through all the levels, make sure Yoshi stays alive, and defeat all the bosses, get all of the gems back. For the incredibly memorable Mario Universe characters, King Fret and Prince Pine. Don't know how they didn't end up in Smash, but that's a discussion for another day. So, you saw me pick up an item earlier that was a fire flower. The function for those in this game is, you'll see below the life bar is a power bar. That power bar goes down when I hold fire. And the fire flower will boost the length of that gauge, so I can shoot faster for longer. You can see that the fire rate degrades as the power bar goes down. And the fire flowers appear in different orders depending on what order of the stages you go through. So I'm going through in a particular order to try and ensure that... Okay, good, got the first hit. To try and ensure that I get max power as fast as possible. Now there's another reason I do this stage first, which is it is one of the most RNG heavy ones in the game. You can't damage... I can't remember this Koopa's name. Mary Sue Koopa. You can't damage Mary Sue Koopa unless you drop an anvil on her head. And it's completely random what pipe she comes out of, and you're just kind of relying on the anvil eventually just happening to be over the right pipe. Now, there's another reason that I use a second controller for this, other than what I'm doing with this boss, which is I'm just moving Yoshi off to the side, and then most of the projectiles will not hit him, because all the bosses aim for the center of the screen. I also have 2 controllers because it allows me to path a little more tightly through some of the stages. And, because I don't trust Yoshi to do it himself. Reason being, when I wasn't playing 2 controllers, I would have instances where Yoshi just walked off the side of a stage. I had one instance where he got caught in the level geometry and I just had to wait for the timer to run out. Yoshi cannot be trusted. But there is a way to keep Yoshi in line, which is to do this. And you're not supposed to do that, but sometimes Yoshi deserves it, if I'm being just completely blunt. So those jump pads that you see, if I do not hit jump at the right time, Yoshi will not jump and either fall into a pit or walk across an electrified field, and neither of those are good options. If you were just playing with one controller, you would use the button on the handle of the Super Scope, but I can't exactly reach that right now. So, this boss coming up is like one of the most basic bosses in the game, because its weak point is always exposed. that becomes a problem with some of the later bosses in the game, is there are only certain states in which you can shoot them, and it's random whether they will be in that state. So for this one, you're supposed to wait for Punk Rock Koopa to raise his head up, but if you shoot at where his hands are on the console inside the machine, you can do damage to him early and not have to wait for that cycle. And that was a relatively quick boss fight. Another thing is, if I have an item, I will usually try to use it before the boss fight ends just to avoid that little extra score rundown. Unless I have a time item, like the thing that looks like a clock, because it's actually more efficient to just, oh god, which one is level 2? This is where mirror mode really does not help. Okay, I think we got it. But yeah, if you have a clock, it's best to just hold on to that. So, as for the enemies in this, I run 2 categories for this game. I run, well, lately I've been running hard mode a lot. It's a common thing with Super Scope games for there to be an extra mode, which makes the game significantly harder. And that is the case for this game as well. When you beat it the first time and just run the credits, oh, it didn't give me the gate. That's okay, we'll power through this. With hard mode in this game, it increases the enemy count. The enemies take more damage to defeat, and there are fewer item spawns. Also, the bosses move twice as fast and shoot twice as much and take more damage. So hard mode of this is actually somewhat intimidating. So that gate that I was trying to go through before, almost every level in this game has like a split path in it, which has that swinging gate blocking it. And some of those, like, the difference is pretty negligible as far as time difference between using the main path or the alternate path. But there are certain ones where the game, well, the level becomes shorter if you use the gate or don't use the gate. Also, in the first level, if you take the gate path, the time is relatively the same, but you don't get the Fire Flower power-up. So gate order is gate and level order are pretty important throughout the run. This is random for whether he opens his weak point, or decides to shoot out of his side turrets, or jump. And we definitely want him to open the weak point, obviously. Mario FPS deserves to be explored again. I agree. Like, outside of a Newgrounds Flash game, yes, Mario FPS needs to be explored more. Do people even go to Newgrounds anymore? Okay, level 4, this will be a little awkward. Alright. So this introduces the first point in the run where Yoshi can conceivably fall off the stage. If he falls into the water, there's a really long animation where you reset your position and then lose a few coins. So let's try not to do that. I'm going to keep him close to the wall for the most part. This is another thing you can do if you're using a controller, is move Yoshi to one side or the other. And that can cut down on the amount of enemies that you have to shoot per stage. Because a surprising amount of Yoshi's Safari is just lag mitigation. Pretty much everything will cause this game to lag. And I do not have to touch the Super Scope for a bit. For the most part, the star item does not appear if you're playing on hard mode. But in normal mode, you'll have a couple instances like this where you can give your arm a rest. Oh, Yoshi, why? So, that happens if you fall off the stage, but here, you just fall off the stage and go to the next portion of the level. I'm just asking for a little consistency. So these guys aren't so bad for this level, but there is a level later on where they become the bane of my existence, so you can look forward to that. These are bloopers, right? I think I got that name right. So, bloopers can be pretty annoying because, more so than some of the other enemies, they will track your movement. And also in this stage, some of them will spawn very close to you and give you very little time to react. So the nice thing about this boss is you can deal with the enemies he tosses at you while also shooting his weak point. So that is a fairly simple mini-boss. Okay, now I definitely want to hit this gate. That saves a significant amount of time, and also, I don't have to shoot anything for a while. Now, because I missed that one gate earlier, we're not maxing out the power bar as fast as you normally could. Normally you'd be able to do it on this stage, but I'm just gonna have to deal with a shortened power bar for a little bit. Didn't quite get the 2-cycle. Oh well. This boss in particular is kind of nightmarish to fight on hard mode, because he is so much faster. And if you can't keep up with him, the screen basically fills with projectiles and Yoshi goes down pretty quickly. Okay, so part of the reason I get nervous at the level select screen is that it is possible to go into the same level multiple times, in addition to picking the wrong stage. So if that happens, I'll basically just have to take a death with Yoshi, and then back out to the level select. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Now, for the bomb enemies, it is technically possible to just jump over them with Yoshi, but I'm playing it a little safe by just shooting all of them. Plus, the timing for that is a little tricky, and if there's a bomb on the other side, you'll just end up getting hit by it, so we'll just play it safe for this run. Those guys, however, there's a pretty big window in which you can jump over those. And there will be many more of those in a couple levels after this one. Alright, next mini-boss. Okay, there's a particular pattern I want this one to do. And it looks like he's doing it. Oh, that's the really good pattern. Okay. So he can either hop back and forth and throw hammers, or he can jump way up into the sky and then slam the ground. If he does the latter, he becomes much harder to hit. So thankfully got a good pattern. Alright, now the weak point is the turrets on this one. This is another one where you're kind of relying on getting a decent pattern. Okay, now he can either hop around, shoot from his eyes, or pop out of the hat. When he pops out of the hat, Facial Cream Koopa, puts his hand out to haul himself up, and you can shoot the hand to make him pop out early and then get some extra damage. Thankfully, he was very cooperative in that second phase. In my practice leading up to this, he was not doing that at all. Also, I keep putting the scope down in between levels, just so my arm doesn't get tired. Oh, this is gonna be hard. Whew, okay. Hate when they put the level right in the middle of other levels. Okay, so this is where these guys become a little bit more of a problem. They're not as bad as in a later stage where they appear, because for this level, you cannot fall off the side. That's foreshadowing. Now, the direction that these shells move is random, and it is possible sometimes, we'll see if it happens or not, to have a shell that just, instead of coming towards you, is moving away from you, and you end up chasing it for half of the stage. Doesn't look like it happened this time. Oh well. So this is one of the levels where taking the gate is pretty negligible time-wise. And there's not like some power-up you get if you take that path as opposed to the other one. I think the time difference is like quarter of a second, half a second, so it's not much, but it's something. That's one down. The hitbox on this is kind of weird. You have to aim like above where the joint is, otherwise it won't register. And for this one, you have to kind of aim at the outside edge of where the tentacle ends. Alright, that was an okay boss. This is also one of the few instances where they recycle one of the Koopa kids for the boss. Feel foreshadowed. Good, you should. Okay, so there is one stage left. Wink, wink. Okay, this is the portion where you can just start jumping over all of these guys. However, there is a boost pad, so this can be a little tricky. Okay, I at least got through that without getting hit by the spiky guys. Now there are some points later on where I will hit the boost pad and just deliberately run into a wall. Because sometimes Yoshi can get going too fast, and his steering is worse than the Jeep Gladiator, so you kind of have to like slam him into a wall to get him to curve around some of these bends properly. I apologize if that's an abnormally specific reference, just bad memories. There we are, now we have the maximum power gauge. Alright, so this boss has a relatively quick kill you can do, but it's entirely dependent on him giving you the right pattern. We'll see what he does. And he's not giving the right pattern. Wow, this is a really bad pattern. So he can do that, or he can stop and throw bombs. And he is not throwing bombs at all. This is Less than ideal. Well, sure, now you do it. And he only does it once. Okay, now on to phase 2. This is where I'm hoping he's a little more cooperative. There you go. So, this is another instance where you can shoot him early to get an extra hit, but usually if you let him come out the entire way, Fonzie Koopa will just leave the hatch open and absorb more damage. So, it's actually a little more beneficial to wait a bit when he does that. So that was the last stage, right? Wrong. Because now we're into section 2. Now, level 8, there's another gate for this stage. But the gate actually makes the level significantly longer. So we are just going to avoid it entirely. At one point, this also becomes like one of the laggiest stages in the game. You'll know it when you see it. It's also one of the more annoying mini-bosses that appears in this. So it'll sway around a lot, and you can see I'm kind of steering Yoshi back and forth to try and keep this mini-boss on screen for as long as possible. Alright, that wasn't too terrible. Oh, here it begins. Now, there are a number of pretty RNG-heavy bosses in this game, which can make it a little frustrating to run at times. This one, the magician's name is Kamek, right? Something like that? So, there are 2 phases to this fight. He can appear in 4 different positions, and he will teleport either once or twice in between each instance of him attacking. Obviously, we want him to do one teleport as much as possible. This fight is like one of the more difficult fights to do on hard mode because he just teleports so quickly. Now for phase 2. So he's a much bigger target, but now he can teleport once, twice, 3 times, or 4 times. And you pretty much have to hit him in the face, otherwise your shot won't count. Like, the one thing you have to go on for this is that he will not teleport and appear in the same place twice. Okay, that wasn't too terrible. He gave me a fair amount of 1s in that second phase. And I think that is the last instance in the run where we're going to end up skipping a gate. Mainly because there's like a couple levels coming up where there just aren't any gates, so it's not possible. Welcome to Boo Haunted House. And this game completely changes how boos work in order to make this level work. Because you're looking right at them, but they're still coming after you. So you have to shoot them at a certain time to be able to walk past them without taking damage. But you have to time the shot, because Like, they'll only pause for maybe a second and a half before they start coming after you again. Okay, taking this gate does save a fair amount of time, and cuts down on the amount of boos that you have to deal with. Like, these little fire guys are like a breeze to deal with by comparison. Okay, I get a little nervous taking corners in this stage, because this stage, more than others, is the one where I've had Yoshi get caught in the level geometry and just had to let the timer run down and start the level over. So I may not take the corners as tight for this one. Now eventually there is going to be, yep, here it is, the Lakitu mini-boss. Okay, decent pattern so far. Not so decent pattern now. So the Lakitu can throw either 1, 2, or 3 of those little spiky guys. And for whatever reason, it seems like it's extremely rare that it'll throw 3 of them. In fact, most of my runs, he will only throw 1 at a time, so actually kind of fortunate that he threw... Oh god. It's okay, that was just a health pickup, and we're pretty good on health right now. Now I want your input. What do you think the boss will be for this stage? It's a boo. This phase can drag on kind of long. It can also be a little annoying because I've had an issue while calibrating my super scope where I can't shoot all the way to one side of the screen. Like that. But normally it is possible to hit him 3 times on each of these phases. There we are. Only problem is he will randomly go incorporeal, and you cannot hit him there. Phase 2. Should be fairly simple. You have to hit the ghost with the tongue sticking out. And every time it resets its cycle, that ghost is always at the top of the screen for these guys. Okay, that wasn't too terrible. Oh, we're actually on an okay pace considering I'm playing with a mirror. Right, and... okay. So at this point, the game doesn't really have many more new things it can introduce. So instead, it just throws a crap ton of the things you've already seen at you. And this is also the point where the game just loves, like, throwing you a boost pad and then dropping a half-dozen enemies in front of you. Alright, let's see if we get the good pattern this time. No, we do not. Another thing for those mini-bosses is they'll only appear if you're in the middle of the screen. Like, if you're not in the middle of the screen, it'll take a few seconds for Yoshi to readjust before the boss fight actually starts. Okay. Now this is going to be the Charging Chuck fight. This is the one of the few enemies that I know the name of solely because it's football related. So on normal mode you get a star for this battle, so you can just use that immediately. If you allow him to land on the ground will shake and you won't be able to shoot. But if you just shoot him before he hits the ground, he'll fall normally and you can keep shooting him. Ideally, he would stay on the ground and just run back and forth throwing bombs. But it's extremely rare to get like a really good pattern out of Charging Chuck. Alright. Now, this stage is where the foreshadowing comes in. Because now we have a bunch of fish enemies and no borders on the side of the stage. I'm kind of trying to slalom my way through these. Oh, Yoshi, you almost had it. Okay, so that is one fall on this stage so far. 2 falls on this stage so far. Oh, this is less than ideal. Okay, I think there's one portion later in the stage where I'm in more immediate danger of falling. See, the nice thing about normal mode is these guys will go away after one hit. Hard mode, you need to hit them a couple of times, which, when they're moving targets like this, can become pretty difficult. 3. Alright, and now for another boss that RNG can just dictate that this will take a really long time. So there are 2 main behaviors for this boss. It'll either dive into the water and then resurface in one of 4 spots, or it'll move from side to side and fire the turrets. Obviously, we want to stay above the water as much as possible. At the very least, when it's diving and surfacing, you can land an extra shot on the Koopa. Oh no. So it's possible to land the last shot as it's diving, and then you have to go through the animation where it switches over to the next Koopa, and it wastes a bit of time. Alright, now for phase 2. This can also be a little annoying. It can move side to side, or it can open the face on the front, which is the weak point. Okay. Wasn't cooperating much at first, but we got there in the end. There were only like 4 Super Scope games. Pack-in game, Super Scope 6, this, Battle Clash 1 and 2. The second one is technically called Metal Combat. There were only a handful of games that were Super Scope only, but there were like 12 games that were compatible with the Super Scope. It's just that some of them you didn't necessarily need the Super Scope. But you probably should play with it, because usually, like, for some of those, if you're trying to do the shooting with just like a regular controller moving the cursor, it's like too slow, and it's just really way more difficult to play with a controller than this. Alright, so we are into the final stage of this game. We're doing okay on time. Kind of trying to carve a path right down the middle of these enemies. And this is the only new thing you're going to see from this game in terms of the regular stages now. Yep, they found a way to put those in. Those are kind of like the boos, in that you shoot them and they stop moving for a bit, and you can like kick them off to the side of the stage. But after a certain amount of time, they will start moving again and can damage you. Fortunately, they're pretty easy to jump over, so they're not too much of a threat. In fact, there was another game I used to run called Tin Star, which is one of the only games I can think of that's compatible with the SNES controller, the Super Scope, and the SNES mouse. So pretty much anything you want to play it with, you can. Alright, so before we get to the final boss, the game does have sort of a boss rush, although it's more of a mini boss rush. These are going to be a lot simpler now because we have the maxed out power gauge. For that guy in particular, I just make sure one of the boomerangs doesn't get hit, because he will stand still while waiting to catch it. Okay, come on, good pattern. We got a 3! Immediately followed by a 1. Oh well. Ideally, a 3 and a 2 gives you enough time to take him out on normal mode. Almost there. This one is being stubborn. Alright. And that will bring us to the final boss. Can you guess who it is? Of course, Mecha Bowser. Shoutouts to Battle Clash. So there are a couple different phases to this. The hands are gone. Now we get the torso shots. Okay. This movement pattern could completely screw me over, because he likes moving off to one particular side of the screen. And when he does that, one of his... Yep, he just did it. So he can actually move all the way to the side, and his hand will go completely off screen and I can't shoot it. Why you gotta make this more complicated, Bowser? This is as far to the side as I can shoot. Alright, final phase. Time is on the last hit. Hitbox makes it hard to tell if you're shooting him in the nose or down the throat. That's it, time. Let's see, 40, 32-ish? That's not bad considering I'm playing with a mirror. If I remember correctly, I think the record for this on normal mode is like 36:58. And then hard mode is like 38 or 39 something. But mission accomplished. We got all the gems back, and Prince Pine and King Fret will be relevant for decades to come. And thank you to Retro Gaming Live TV for letting me show this off with the goofiest category I could think of. And yeah, I'm gonna probably stick around for the next couple runs. Good luck to everybody who's coming up after this, and thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day.